Hi, I'm Amy and welcome to my channel. I am a relationship coach and I specialise in healing attachment styles so that you can feel secure and confident in your relationships. And in today's video, I really want to delve into inner child work and what it is, how it relates to your attachment style, how it relates to shadow work integration, and really delve into why inner child work really does matter and how it transforms your relationships and can really accelerate your growth when you get to know your inner child and integrate it. So stick around till the end of the video. I'll give you all of my hints and tips, but if you like this channel, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like so that other people have access to it so that it can help them in their own lives and relationships. So I felt inspired to make this video today because I've done a lot of inner child work over my journey, over my self-discovery journey. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up today was because I avoided inner child work like the plague. I would make excuses like, oh, it can't be that important. Oh, it all happened in the past. It's not affecting me now. But the real reason I was avoiding it was because I didn't want to look at painful memories. I didn't want to look at my childhood. And even though I really did know that a lot of what was going on in my relationships, a lot of how I acted in the present moment was to do with my childhood and teenage years. So why is inner child work important and how does it relate to subconscious mind reprogramming? So your inner child, if we say, for example, take your inner child as the years of, say, 1 to 7, and these are the years where you're really impressionable, you're like a sponge, and you haven't got the capacity or the cognitive capability to process emotions as a child. You see the world feelingly, and everything that happens is an impression on you. And when bad things happen, when traumatic events or negative events happen, that is impressed within the subconscious at such a young age. And when these things are impressed, and if they're particularly traumatic, as a child, your nervous system is not strong enough to process that emotion. So when you have an incident happen and you look at it from your adult eyes, from your adult perspective, what I found particularly difficult was understanding what happened from the eyes of the childhood me. I would bat it off and think, well, that was nothing, or they didn't mean to say that, or oh, they were just having a bad day. And that didn't really work because when it happened when I was a child, they did mean what they said in my eyes. And, it did mean that they'd left me. It did mean that I'd been emotionally abandoned. And because I hadn't processed the emotions as I would do now, it left a lasting effect on me. It really did give me the subconscious message that I wasn't chosen, that I was stupid, that I wasn't wanted, that I wasn't loved, that I wasn't important, that I didn't matter. And all of these core beliefs, the root of them was in my childhood. So when we delve into the inner child, it is difficult, it is painful. But what our job is now that we have gone into adulthood is by noticing that this child is there and it's there wherever you go. So when you react to something or when you seemingly overreact to something, I can't remember off the top of my head, I will link it in the description, who said the quote, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And that is so true, because if I give you a real life example, when my current partner didn't text me back, or if we'd had an argument and he was taking space, I would see that as an abandonment. And that would really trigger my abandonment wounds, which rooted really in my childhood. It wasn't really anything to do with my partner. And had I been more secure growing up, it would not have affected me in that way. And I would have understood that he's just taking space. Maybe I need to take some space and, we'll come together and everything's going to be all right. But instead of that happening, because my abandonment wounds were triggered, and when I say triggered, I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't sleep. I couldn't focus on anything but what was going on. And, I was all up in my head. And I'm telling myself horror stories about how I'm never going to see him again, how I'm never going to speak to him again. And it was an overreaction to what was really going on. So by doing inner child work, what our job as the adult is to reparent our inner child and provide the needs for that inner child that we didn't get at the time. So if, for example, you were emotionally neglected as a child, so that could lead you to believe that you're not important, that you don't matter, that your emotions don't matter. And you could take this into your adult relationships and behave kind of the same way. That, you know, you might put your partner's needs above your own. You might fall into codependent patterns just to get your own needs met, when realistically it is you who needs to meet those needs. So if you are meditating and if you are doing inner child work and it's coming up for you, you know, whatever your core beliefs are, that you weren't loved, that you're not worthy, that you don't matter, what the aim of this is to discover what that child needed at the time and how you can give it to that child now. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, for if you are really, really struggling with inner child work, because sometimes our childhood is that traumatic that we don't want to look at it, and it's not your fault. It's a subconscious mechanism that's in place to stop you feeling the way that you felt back then. And I personally found it so hard to connect to that inner child because it was so far removed from who I am now. And I really had to develop some sort of connection, some sort of relationship with this child, which I found difficult to do because, you know, in my mind, I was still telling myself, no, I'm being silly. You know, my relationship with my parents is healed now. There's no point in going into the past. So what I did was a meditation, a really, really quick meditation where I would visualize this inner child, actually picture her. So if you're struggling with that, try and get a childhood photo of yourself so that you can really start to imagine yourself around this child. And imagine that child saying to you that they're here wherever you go. So I would go into meditation and I would see this child say to me, I'm here wherever you go. Please don't forget me. And I would sit with that. And that's how I developed that relationship with my inner child. And your inner child is basically an archetype. It is part of the shadow. And by integrating that inner child, you are able to then, I mean, if you're in a relationship, for example, where you do fear abandonment, where if small things happen, you are fearing that you're going to get left, it is, well, in my case it was, maybe it is in yours, that it's this child's voice that's coming up quite loudly. But once I integrated my inner child, and once I became confident that I could meet that child's needs and that there was a trust that was built, that voice quietened down a lot. So that's tip number two. So I would do that meditation every day really quickly. It doesn't have to be a big, half an hour session. It took me about 5 minutes, but I did it every single day. And what happened with that once it was integrated is that I started to trust myself more. I started to, question this voice that was coming up, that I was going to get abandoned, that I was going to get left, that the relationship had ended. And I would start to choose myself instead of losing sleep and not eating and, really not helping myself in those situations. I would actively choose myself, because at the time when it had happened in my past, nobody was there for me. So I had to be there for me. And it really, really grew my self-esteem, and I started to really take care of myself in those moments. I started to not react to being manipulated. I started to not react to silence, even though it was so uncomfortable. I was able to soothe myself a lot more in those situations. So that is the basics of inner child work and why it's so important in your growth journey, because it doesn't have to be relationships. It could be in your career that your inner child is affected. It might might be that you were subconsciously given the message that when you were younger that you were never going to amount to anything, or that you'll never be successful, or that you weren't good enough at school. And those sort of beliefs can really hinder you later in life, like I say, in terms of career, in terms of financial success, particularly. I know that it did with me. I mean, I never ever went for promotions. I never went for other jobs. I was so grateful that I had my job. I was terrified of doing something wrong and terrified of losing my job, but it was all subconscious programming that I picked up in childhood or my teenage years. So I hope you find this video helpful. I will do another video on this that's more in depth, but I just wanted to give you an overview of, why inner child work is important, so you can go ahead and research that. But I will be doing more videos on inner child work and shadow work, because I feel that these things are often missed out, or that there's a misconception of what it actually is and how it can actually really benefit you going forward in all areas of your life. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.